Today we're going to have a look at an app called Lossless Scaling, which is a piece of software that's been around for a while. Over the last couple of weeks or so, I've seen quite a bit of positive coverage of it, and there's been some recent updates where it's actually considered really good now. I kind of want to do a deep dive of it, but there are some games that have native frame gen support, which I'll get to one in just a second. But then you've got some games like Spider-Man 2, for example, which actually has pretty decent frame gen implementation. It's one of those frame gen implementations where you can't really notice a visual difference. But lossless scaling pretty much allows you to apply frame gen to pretty much anything, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, let's just hop right in. I have briefly looked at this, but I haven't really delved too deep into it. So I do have an Oblivion profile already, which I'll get to that in a second, because I think that's a good example of what this software can do. But that's literally about as far as I've explored as far as lossless scaling is concerned. So yeah, I just kind of want to explore today. So obviously the menu itself is actually pretty easy and self-explanatory. You've got different, let's just go to the default here. You've got frame gen, then you've got different scaling, and obviously with this being a YouTube video, you are kind of stuck to viewing it at 60 FPS, but you should be able to see the frame rate overlay, which I have enabled here as draw FPS. Today I want to focus on the frame generation aspect of lossless scaling. I know that there are different scaling options here, there are 3 separate frame gen options. My understanding is that you want to use frame gen 3.1. These older implementations are worse. And then you've got 2 different modes. You've got a fixed mode and an adaptive mode. And if you hover over these, it actually explains what each mode does. So fixed mode gives better quality and performance by displaying real frames more frequently when using integer multipliers. But the output frame rate depends on the base game frame rate. So what I have found is that fixed frame gen basically just multiplies your current frame rate by 2 or by 3 or 4 and so on. So if you have, you can do basic math, right? If you have a frame rate of 60 FPS, if you use a 2 times fixed frame gen, you'll get 120. If you have kind of a fluctuating frame rate, the output frame rate will also fluctuate. So it will be, if for example you are playing at 60 and then it drops down to 55, then your output frame rate will go from 120 down to 110 and so on. But then adaptive frame gen gives you a locked target FPS. It scales the frame gen multiplier based on the target FPS. So if I target 120 FPS in a game, then the output frame rate will always be 120 FPS, but that will introduce some pretty bad artifacting, especially say if you are going down to 30 FPS, you are going to notice that, and also the input lag is going to be pretty bad as well. Now this flow scale is going to be how good your image quality is, I'm pretty sure. I'm not super I'm not super in touch with what any of this means, but it says here right at the bottom, it says for optimal smoothness, set a scaled input resolution of 1080p. So for example, set the scale to 75% for a 1440p game or 50% for 4K. So I have it at 50% right now because my display is outputting 4K resolution. I'm going to put this back on fixed as well, and then we'll have a look at that later on. Now, as far as capturing and stuff, this doesn't really matter to me too much because I'm using an external capture card, but if I was using OBS, then I'm pretty sure that this would be more relevant. Now the sync mode is important for input latency. VSync, it's by itself adds a bit of input latency, so leaving it on the default here seems to be probably the best in between. Now if you turn it off, I'm pretty sure that this lowers input latency the most, but it introduces screen tearing, which can be pretty ugly looking. But if you have VRR, which my TV is capable of VRR, then keeping it off seems like the best option. The frame latency here is the number of frames that can be queued before being submitted for rendering. So keeping it super low, right now I've got 1 frame latency, that will really reduce input latency, but it might reduce the effectiveness. Then obviously down here, HDR support is on because I have an HDR display. G-Sync support I'm actually going to turn that off because I don't have an NVIDIA GPU, so there's no real reason for me to have that on. And then draw FPS will just give you an on-screen display of the in-game frame rate and then the actual frame rate that is being outputted by Lossless Scaling. So let's just hop straight into a game. I want to show you guys Oblivion Remastered. Okay, so, you know, we're out in the open world now. Let me get the overlay up. You guys should be able to see that. Sorry if it's a bit small. But you can see here that we're getting about 60, 65 FPS, right? Now, I want you to take a look at the bottom right-hand corner at my character's hand. This is with frame gen off, right? There's no smudging, there's no weird artifacting. But if we go into the menu here, enable FSR frame gen, like the in-game implementation of FSR frame gen, and then we go down to the bottom, you guys should be able to see this as well. My character's hand is kind of like clipping, and there's like a lot of ghosting, and this is kind of an issue with some frame gen implementations. Like, they're kind of lazily thrown in, especially for games like Oblivion here, which is an Unreal Engine 5 game. It's a very, very pretty game. It's absolutely beautiful, actually, but my frame rate has gone up by about 40 FPS. So, you know, you kind of have to think about, oh, is this, like, you can really see it here. If I really swing my mouse around, you can really see the ghosting. It's not very pleasant, and it is very distracting. So I'm going to disable frame gen. I'm going to use lossless scaling here. So I've actually got a preset here. It's basically just the same as the default preset right now. We're going to hit scale here. And yeah, see how it goes. So we hit the scale button and then go back into the game. And after 5 seconds, ooh, yeah. Now, just before I show you the actual frame rate on lossless scaling, you can see that our base frame rate actually dropped by about 5-6 FPS. However, if I remove this, hopefully you guys can see this. I'll zoom in. But the actual in-game frame rate, or the output frame rate, is actually now, you know, in the high. It's actually better than the in-game implementation of frame gen. And you know what? It actually looks pretty good. Like, let me just swing my sword around really quick. There is pretty much no ghosting or anything like that. It's pretty insane, to be honest. Like, this is super playable. There's not that much input lag. Like, it's not bad enough to be like noticeable at all. This is like a super playable experience. Now again, this is a 60 FPS YouTube video, so you guys are not going to see the smoothness on my end, but you should still be able to see how decent the image quality is. It's just super smooth. I mean, I'm really trying to find like issues here. However, this is a fixed frame gen here. So whilst we're at about 60 FPS now, and it's super smooth and it's super nice, I'm going to go to a bit more of an intensive area in the open world. I could just swim there, but I'm lazy. The Imperial City waterfront gives me a lot of problems for some reason in this game. Like, it's really taxing. I think I've got hardware ray tracing on high, and this area really doesn't play well on my setup for some reason. I think it's down to all of the reflections and stuff. But as you can see, the base frame rate now, yeah, I mean, it's still pretty decent, I would say. But we are going into the 40s here. But you know what? Image quality wise, it's actually kind of holding up. I want to try adaptive because, yeah, I want to try keeping it at 120 FPS, right? Now, the first thing you'll notice by turning adaptive VSync on is that my base frame rate has like absolutely tanked. We're getting about 30 FPS now on the base frame rate. And at this point, there is a lot of input lag. I hope you can hear me hitting the keyboard and then it taking that long for me to jump. And also the amount of warping now is like pretty severe. You can kind of see whenever I turn the screen, like it just goes into like Vaseline mush territory. So this, I would say, is not really playable. So yeah, honestly, my recommendation for this game in particular, if you are curious, I would say to keep it on a fixed frame rate and then put the multiplier to 2x and keep the frame latency to 1. That honestly provides the cleanest looking picture and the lowest input latency. And you know what? It's pretty good. Okay, so now that we're back outside, you can see that the performance in this game is like rock solid. This is a really well optimized game. We go into my settings here. I'm on 4K. Everything's on ultra, and then I've got FSR quality on, and it looks amazing, and it runs incredibly well as well. If you can see that, I'm over 100 FPS. It's really, really good. I'm going to go to the courtyard because it's a bit more intensive. But yeah, you can still see, like, we're pulling, like, high 80s, low 90s. It's really solid. The moment I turn ray tracing on, we're at about 30 FPS. The base RX 9070 is not the best when it comes to ray tracing. I think that the 9070 XT is generally a lot better at ray tracing. But yeah, we're really kind of like not doing great right now. So I think that that's kind of a no-go. I don't think that path tracing is going to be a great experience. And this is literally just with like medium path tracing as well. This is not this is not like full ray tracing. But I am now curious. I want to try frame gen. So I'm going to keep it on fix, right? I'm going to keep everything on the default, and I want to see if we can get like 60 FPS using lossless scaling, right? So actually using lossless scaling, we have now dropped our base FPS down to 20, which is really bad, actually. So there's actually like no improvement here. So yeah, I mean, I've tried frame gen on a number of applications, trying to get it to like be, decent on this game, but I don't think that using lossless scaling to try to bring up your frame rate when your GPU is already being taxed so heavily is like the use case for this for lossless scaling here. Or at least maybe I've got a setting wrong or something, and I'm sure that someone in the comments will tell me like, oh, there's a way to do it if you do this or you do that. This is not great. I'm going to turn it down to 1440p and see what happens there. So actually I think the problem was that we were trying to run at 4K and it just wasn't very happy with me, because as you can see now, we've actually got a base FPS of like, 39, 40. So now we've got frame gen on and we're getting, 80 FPS. And this is with path tracing. And honestly, like, so as you can see, if I get my cane out, you can really see there's a lot of flicker in here, right? But it's at least playable now at 1440p. But I still wouldn't say that this is a pleasant experience. Would I rather play it at 4K with FSR at 100 FPS, just with no path tracing? I think I would. I think I would much prefer that. I mean, even trying to put it at 120 FPS with this adaptive frame rate, it's just, oh man, it's fine when I'm just walking, but as soon as I turn the camera, yeah, that is not pleasant. So yeah, I would say just turn path tracing off. Yeah, Dark Souls 1, this is a game that is kind of locked to 60 FPS no matter what you do. So yeah, I mean, it's Dark Souls 1, you know what it is. It's pretty good, it feels good. Now there is some pretty bad screen tearing going on in this game, but that's literally just Dark Souls for you. So yeah, let's keep it the same settings here. I'm going to do 2x multiplier so that we can get it up to 120 frames per second. That's really the goal here. I want to see how playable this is. The main thing here is input latency, because, the Souls games are pretty much like, it's required that you have good input lag because you need to dodge at the right time and stuff. And for some reason, lossless scaling is keeping it at 60 and it's turned it into like mush. Let's try and adjust the settings here.
5 minutes later.
I don't know what just changed, but I've just got it to work at 120. I really don't know what I did, but it's working now. So yeah, let's do a bit of a play and see how it goes. This is definitely like super smooth feeling. From a visual perspective, it's actually not bad at all. I'm going to turn motion blur off though, because that's... Oh yeah, that's way better. Oh my goodness. It doesn't feel that different. It does definitely feel a bit smoother, especially when I pan the camera around. But this is definitely like the least noticeable jump to 120 that I've seen so far. So it seems that like turning the sync mode off allows the game to actually do this 120 FPS mode. However, you can see quite a bit of tearing. Like if I pan the camera really quick, there's some pretty major tearing on the top part of the screen. And there is a little bit of artifacting around my character as well. It honestly doesn't feel that much like 120 FPS, but it does feel like markedly better. If I turn it off now, if I turn lossless scaling off now, oh yeah, there is a difference. So overall, lossless scaling is a pretty cool feature to have. I think that it certainly has some pretty specific cool use cases, and my favorite example like in this video was Oblivion. I think that in Oblivion Remastered, the frame gen implementation there, like on a game, like in the game, is really bad, but using lossless scaling is actually really good in that game. It feels great. It's super smooth. You can barely notice any artifacting or anything like that. Dark Souls Remastered, being an older game, putting it up to 120 FPS, I think that it actually looks pretty decent, and there's not much of a difference in input lag. So it definitely depends on the game, but like I think that lossless scaling is a pretty good app, and it's a pretty good tool, and I'm definitely going to use it more. It's pretty fun to sort of tinker with, but there are some real use cases for it, and I've barely scratched the surface like in the 2 hours that I've been recording here. It's also like a really cheap application. It's like £6, so it's definitely worth picking up. But you know, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys even use frame gen? Do you think that it's a viable option? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe because it helps the channel out a lot. And yeah, I mean, I'll see you in the next video. See ya.